Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about the genius of George Gershwin's Concerto in F. Now, why talk about the Concerto in F? Everybody already loves it. We all know it's a masterpiece, right? Well, Gershwin in general, and this piece in particular, tend to be taken for granted in our concert universe. It is a pops concert piece. It is generally not considered to be a big, serious concerto on the level of like Beethoven or Brahms or one of those people, or even the modern piano concerto guys like Bartok and people like that. Well, it should be. It should be, because this is a work of genius, not only in terms of its unbelievable fund of gorgeous melodies, effectively arranged, but also formally, also in terms of development, also in terms of all of those deeper qualities that we impute to the great masters and are unwilling to impute to composers who are immediately successful and popular, which I think is stupid. One of the reasons they're immediately successful and popular usually is because they write great music, and it's worthwhile spending a little time figuring out why the music is so great. And the Gershwin Piano Concerto is a wonderful case in point, I think, because it is so ingeniously put together, marvelously put together, and it comes with some sort of anecdotal baggage that's so much fun to blow up and destroy. The anecdotal baggage in this case is the notion that Gershwin was so unfamiliar with classical forms, oh my, that in order to write this concerto, he had to buy a textbook on concerto form to figure out what the form is, and then he wrote to the textbook. Well, to this day, we don't really know what the textbook was, and we don't know what the textbook said, and so we have no way of knowing whether he followed it or didn't follow it. My guess is that he didn't. And I'm going to tell you why. And in order to tell you why, we're going to really take apart mostly the finale, with a little bit of reference to the first and second movements, because the finale is a rondo. And a rondo, in case you don't know, is a piece of music that has a ritornello. That is a theme that keeps coming back because it returns. The ritornello, get it? Followed by episodes. So the form in letters would be A, B, A, C, A, D, A, etc., 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 like that. But in this particular case, the episodes are based on themes from the previous movements. So it's a recapitulation in the grand sense of the entire content of the concerto up to that point, which is a brilliantly wonderful thing that people don't give Gershwin any credit for. And I'll tell you why when we get to the end of this talk. There's a punchline that'll really knock your socks off. So let's get right to it, shall we? Now, this concerto is based on two ideas. I mean, basically the whole concerto is based on two ideas. There is a motto theme and there is a motto rhythm. The rhythm is that of the Charleston. You know the Charleston, jump, ja, jump, ja, 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 ba-da, ja, 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 ja. That's a Charleston rhythm. The wonderful dance of the Roaring Twenties. And here is the opening motto Charleston rhythm moment. You hear it in the horns, and then there's a sort of woodwind appurtenance that comes after it, which is really the main theme of the first movement. And everything that Gershwin writes in quick tempos after that is based on these two simple ideas. Here you go. So you got it, right? The Charleston rhythm, chum, chum, cha, chum, and then doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. That's it. As simple as can be. And one of the things we usually find out is that great works, and particularly works of great subtlety and complexity, are usually based on very, very simple ideas. And wonderful things happen to those simple ideas. For example, I'm going to give you an example of what Gershwin does in terms of thematic transformation. He takes what we just heard, that little thing, that chunk, 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 and then dum ba 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 dum, and later in the movement, in what we would call in a sonata sort of terminology the development section, intimidating term, turns it into this. Now, anybody who can take that opening and turn it into that tune is a genius, I would say. I really would. I mean, it's a perfectly logical transformation of the theme that gives it an entirely new expressive character. And, I mean, there isn't anything any classical master did, frankly, that's any better or more effective. It's just glorious moment. So that's the first idea in the concerto, and just that the way that Gershwin transforms it is so magnificent. And I want you to just keep in mind that idea of thematic transformation, because there will be more. Now, the second idea in the first movement is the tune that the piano gets. And the tune that the piano gets is the motto of the entire concerto. You don't hear it in the second movement, but you will hear it in the first movement and in the last movement quite a bit. And here is the piano's first entrance. Now, that theme is defined more by the underlying harmony than by the actual tune. The tune is dum 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 da da dum 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 ba da. I mean, it's practically nothing. It's a repeated bunch of notes and then a rhythm, dum ba dum, that sort of thing, dum ba da dum bum bum dum dum. That's it. But that's really, really important, because now we're going to jump all the way to the finale. And whenever I talk to you about thematic transformation, let's listen to the opening of the rondo, the ritornello. That's the theme that's going to come back between all the episodes. And just so you know, there's nothing tricky about this rondo. It's very, very clear. It has 4 episodes separated by 5 returns of the ritornello. It's very, very straightforward. But oh, the subtlety and sophistication with which Gershwin achieves that. Let's listen to the ritornello. Let me just tell you, the performance. Yes, it's a wonderful performance. This is with Orion Weiss, the piano, the Buffalo Philharmonic, under Joanne Falletta on Naxos. It's a very, very good performance. And it comes with the I Got Rhythm Variations and the Second Rhapsody. Not the most well-known Gershwin, which is a really good idea. As I said when I reviewed this originally on ClassicsToday.com, and you can go and read that review if you're interested. But anyway, back to the rondo. Here is the opening ritornello theme. Racy, exciting, isn't it? Oh, it's just wonderful, isn't it? But you notice something about that racy rondo ritornello, the three R's, the racy rondo ritornello? That theme is exactly the same as the motto theme that we just heard, that the piano played in the first movement. Da, 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 da. Speed it up. Da, 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 ba, ba, da, 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 ba, ba. Speed it up, and what do you get? That's all it is. It's the same theme. Now, I've been buzzing around this concerto all of my adult life, which is getting longer by the second, and I haven't found anybody who pointed that out. And it's so obvious and such a marvelous example of thematic transformation. So that is your ritornello theme, which is based on the motto. But we're going to hear the motto itself, because the first episode of the rondo consists of the motto. And when I play these episodes, usually I'll play a little bit of the intro and sort of lead back sometimes, so you get a sense of it. But here is the motto theme in the quicker tempo of the rondo as the motto theme. That is with the right harmonies and all of that stuff in place. But essentially, it's the same tune as the ritornello. It's just slowed down and harmonized differently. Isn't that just unbelievably cool? I just love things like that. I really do. It's just so much fun. Here is episode number 1. Now, I hope that's perfectly clear. Now, episode number 2 is an entirely new theme. It isn't based on anything that we've heard previously. It is unique to this movement, which is a good thing, because you don't want to hear music that's entirely old news, and this theme has something very interesting to do. I'm going to play you the theme, and then we will talk about a little bit more about what happens to it and what it does and what its purpose is in the movement and why Gershwin is such a genius. So here is episode number 2, which is actually the second theme, unique theme of the rondo. Here it is. Now, this theme has two purposes, two wonderful purposes. The first purpose is that ultimately, when we hear it eventually towards the end, it's going to acquire the Charleston rhythm of the first movement, because Charleston rhythm, the dum bum da 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 dum chong chong, makes a wonderful accompaniment to that particular theme. And so it does actually come back and start to recapitulate the themes from the first movement, the other theme, the main theme, the first theme of the first movement. That's one thing. But the other thing it does is marvelous, because a composer who knows what they're doing will do more than dedicate a movement such as a finale just to repeating things we've already heard. It has its own business to mind. And its business is this. It's very witty. It's this second theme. It wants to be the ritornello. It really wants to be the ritornello. And so the second episode is a sort of tussle between the two themes. The ritornello tries to come back, this thing interrupts. Then the ritornello tries to come back, and this thing interrupts. And they sort of have at it for a little while, and they can't make up their mind how it's going to go. So the ritornello comes back for its third time or second time, whichever one it is. I think it's the third time now. And then the third episode follows, and the third episode is the lyrical, gorgeous theme from the second half of the slow movement. But it gets interrupted by the second tune of the rondo, which provides the lead back to the real ritornello. So they're always sort of vying for ritornello-hood throughout this movement. I'm going to play you that, and you'll hear exactly what I mean. This gorgeous tune from the second movement comes back, and then you'll hear the second theme, which will lead back to the actual, real, authentic ritornello. Here it is. Get it? And that's going to happen again because the real ritornello comes back. And then we get the fourth episode. Now, the fourth episode is the quick central section of the slow movement. Ja, 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 ya, 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 ba, da, bum, bum, ba, da, da, da. I mean, I don't have to sing it. You'll hear it in a second. But that's what that is. And just as that gets going, our wannabe ritornello, the second theme, comes back again, just like it did in the last episode, and leads back to the real ritornello, just like we heard it before. And here is that moment. So those are all the episodes. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? They're all very clear and easy to hear. And then finally, the actual ritornello comes back and comes up to a big climax, leading to the most wonderful moment in the whole concerto, which is, of course, the bang on the gong, which I'm going to play you. And then we get the coda. And the coda begins with the grand, glorious theme that which we've heard way all along, but from the very beginning of the first movement, the piano's initial entrance, that da 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 bum bum, and here it is. And so on and so on. And the coda works up to a big fulfilling ending with the piano going crazy and the orchestra going wild and the timpani pounding around and these big trills going wow, 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 wow. It's just marvelous. You can play it yourself and figure it out. Now, why is this such a work of genius? First of all, I mean, you can imagine already, I think, that it's just extremely sophisticated in terms of the way it's built. It has its own emotional ambience. It's full of bravura and wit and elegance, and the tunes are just glorious. So why don't people give it any credit? But here is the punchline I promised you, which I think is just so salutary, to think of these things. The overall shape of this concerto is a big opening sonata form movement, which we've just mentioned, and then a nocturnal slow movement, with a fast middle section in the middle, and then the marvelous rondo with sections that refer to the previous themes of the concerto. Now, that shape is, people say, well, it's ramshackle, it was Gershwin's inexperience, it was this, it was that. there is another concerto that does exactly the same thing, which people have always acclaimed as a formal masterpiece, and that is the Second Piano Concerto of Bartók. Now, Bartók is absolutely famous for being a formal master. He liked structure. His pieces are incredibly intricately and amazingly structured. And one of his favorite structures is what they call an arch form. And the arch form usually is a 5-part form in which you have, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast. That's an arch form. 5 parts, symmetrically arranged. Well, doesn't that sound like something we've just been discussing? Bartók's Second Concerto begins with a big sonata movement, first movement, followed by a second movement, which is a nocturne, just like Gershwin's is a nocturne. Gershwin's, of course, is a blues piece with a wonderful trumpet solo. Bartók's has, weird, eerie, non-vibrato strings and creepy hoogie thingies. And then it has a quick middle section, both of them. And then the nocturne comes back. And then the finale of the Bartók Second Concerto is a rondo in which the episodes recall the themes of the previous movements. In other words, it has exactly the same form, and I mean exactly the same form in the large as Gershwin's piano concerto does. But Bartók's concerto is always acclaimed a masterpiece, while the Gershwin concerto is always acclaimed a ramshackle amateur effort by a naive talent who never quite got his brain around major forms. It's such bullshit. It's just such bullshit. It makes me crazy when I hear that stuff, but you hear it all the time. And so I just had to bring that up because here's the real kicker. The real kicker is that Gershwin's piano concerto was composed, 5, 6, 7 years before Bartók's. So we ought to be talking about Gershwin influencing Bartók, or something like that. Of course, who knows? I mean, we don't know. Although, Gershwin was friends with everybody. I mean, he got around. He loved Debussy. He tried to get lessons from Ravel, but Ravel wouldn't do it because he said Gershwin didn't need it. I mean, Gershwin was Schoenberg's tennis partner. And Schoenberg had the highest respect for Gershwin, granted as a naive genius, more or less, but they were friends. They got along, and Gershwin got along just as well with everybody else in the world, from the blues singers up in Harlem. He just was this sort of, sponge who just took it all in, and out it came. But to say that he did not know how to structure a large-scale composition, as I hope this little chat has suggested, is absolutely absurd. And so now, as the pièce de résistance, I want to run the whole movement from the Concerto in F, the whole finale, all 7 minutes and 12 seconds of it in this performance, just so you can hear how it all fits together, because it is such a brilliant and fantastic and absolutely formally perfect musical entity. The whole concerto is, but this movement particularly. And here, again, with Orion Weiss, piano, the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, Joanne Folletta, conductor on Naxos, is the finale of Gershwin's Concerto in F. Phenomenal, isn't it? I actually played that at the 92nd Street Y, well, decades ago, but oh God, it's more fun than anyone has any right to have. It really is. And if you want, that's a very good performance, by the way. This is an excellent performance. That's why I chose it. I'm not going to give you a dud. There are a couple other, really remarkable and recommendable ones. There's, the Jeffrey Siegel one on Vox with Slatkin, which is wonderful. But the iconic version of the Concerto in F is this one, Earl Wild and Arthur Fiedler. And you have to have it. I mean, this is where you begin your life with the Concerto in F. And I can't recommend it strongly enough. It's just unbelievably fabulous in every particular. And I don't need to run through another 100 million billion recordings of it because most of them are going to be pretty good. Most are decent. And, it's a popular work. It's been done very well. And you probably won't go wrong. But just get Earl Wild and then branch out from there. And read the reviews on classicstoday.com. You can get a whole slew of other ideas that way. I think that's a very handy way to go about it. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. I hope this little chat has given you an opportunity to listen to some Gershwin with fresh ears. Take care.